she's definitely finished, and I think it'll be the victims that force her out of a job. Unlike you, I have never ever liked Jess Phillips. I never thought she'd get anything done. The victims have now said they're not going to take part. The two heads who were going to cheer it have all stood down.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's returning. Still amazing guest, good friend of mine, Ash, that Preston journalist. How you doing, Ash?
Yeah, I'm really good, Nick. How are you?
I am good. There's only one story we can talk about today, and it has to be one of my least favourite ministers in the government, and it's Jess Phillips. I often call her a gobby cow, not as an insult, just as a descriptive, because I've said before, I've worked with many people like Jess Phillips in the communities where I've worked. And even though they are gobby and in your face, they get stuff done. And they make councils and police sergeants, they get them doing what they want them to do because they're afraid of them because their mouths won't shut up. And that's what she reminds me of. And I actually thought she'd be terrible as a Labour minister, but I actually thought she'd get things done for the grooming gangs, for her agenda on violence against women and girls. And I thought she'd do some stuff there, but she's been a complete failure. What's your take on what's going on?
Unlike you, I have never ever liked Jess Phillips. I never thought she'd get anything done. I, you know, it's a bit shallow this, right? But I don't like the way she puts on this working class hero act. The way she walks around without any makeup on, thinking it makes her look like a working class person, looking like a scruff, in other words. When working class people aren't like that. This is a woman who, aged quite a while ago now on Question Time, started comparing a night out in Birmingham to the grooming gang scandal, trying to play it down. I don't believe she had any intention whatsoever of doing anything about this. She shouldn't have been in the cabinet. She's got no right being a minister. She's been, in fact, like many of them in the cabinet, she's been promoted well above her intelligence levels, and it's showing. That rant she went on in Parliament, that unhinged rant that I'm sure most people have seen by now. These people seem to think that all they've got to do is scream and shout, and that shows passion. Like, oh God, don't they care? It doesn't. It just looks chaotic. It looks pathetic. And that's exactly how she looks. She pretends she's done all this work on grooming gangs, etc. But what has she actually achieved? What has she actually done? This is a woman who is terrified of her constituency. She had a majority of nearly over 10,000 before the last general election. A majority is now down to 693. She's got a constituency that is 43%. I don't know if it's just Pakistani or Muslim, one of them, but it's 43%. Even when she won last time, she got heckled on stage. She knows she's going to lose her seat, and her legacy is going to be letting the despicable animals in these grooming gangs off the hook, or at least trying to before she leaves her job.
For people who don't know who Jess Phillips is, let's do a roundup here. So Jess Phillips is the government minister for safeguarding of women and children. That's her number one job, to safeguard women and children. Now, she's talked about this for a decade, about what she'd do in power. The Tories were terrible, and she was right, and how we let our women and girls down. And she's right. And then she gets into power. She becomes a government minister with her hands on the levers to make change, and she does nothing. Then we, people like me and people who I know, and the campaigns we run and help, they forced the Labour government to commission a review by Dame Casey, which came back to Parliament saying, yes, it does need a proper investigation to find out about the cover up. So then Labour were forced to say, we're going to have to do this investigation. That was 5-6 months ago. And it turned out last week, 6 months later, they've not even got a chair to chair this investigation. And then suddenly, some of the survivors of the grooming gangs who were on the committee looking at this, working with Jess Phillips, they said, we've had enough. This is a cover up. You're delaying. You're trying to widen the brief so it gets so diluted that we don't know what went on. At 5 in the last 48 hours of resign, these are 5 young women who were sexually abused, massively abused. They resigned, And the two people Labour were looking at to maybe chair this committee, both of them now have pulled their names out of the hat and said, we're not getting involved in this fiasco. That's where she's up to. And then you're right. Yesterday in Parliament, after Lee Anderson, Reform MP, asked her a question about how crap it all is, she went on a rant. How dare you ask this and that, and this is about the women and the girls and it's like that would have been a great speech when you were sat on the opposition benches when you had no power. But you're now the most powerful person in that chamber when it comes to safeguarding women and children. That's your job. And it doesn't play anymore now. I don't think she can survive. I know Starmer said today, she has my full confidence, Ash. She has my full, but that means nothing. I don't think she can survive.
Yeah, well, Tulip Sadiq had his full confidence, didn't she? Peter Mandelson had his full confidence.
And Ranger, yeah.
She had his full confidence. What happens as soon as you get Starmer's vote of confidence? You're gone. You're right, she can't survive. Labour never wanted this inquiry. That's what people need to understand. It was called for by the Tories about 11 months ago ish. It was about 4 months. It took Labour about 7 months to actually give in.
Mm,
Since then, about what 4 or 5 months ago, we've seen absolutely no movement whatsoever. Those two senior people you're on about that were handpicked by Labour
yeah.
to chair this thing because they don't want to judge that inquiry because that might actually be impartial and might not come down on their side. So they decided to pick people, handpick them. The lady, Sumit Hudson, her name was, wasn't it? She used to be a senior social worker. The other guy, was it Jim Gamble or something his name was?
Yeah.
Something Gamble, weren't it? He was a senior police officer, I think. And the victims of these crimes have turned around, quite rightly so, and said, we don't want these people involved. Why would you want a senior police officer or a senior social worker when they are the institutions
Mm,
that failed these young girls, or young girls as they were at the time, in the first place? And if, rightly so, all the victims are now pulling out. This is going to force Starmer's hand.
mm,
He cannot. I mean, he doesn't want to act on this. Make no mistake about it. But he also can't be seen not to act on it. So he's in one hell of a catch-22, and it's his own fault for avoiding the inquiry in the first place. If he'd have just said yes, then that would have been it.
mm,
But they've now laid out a list of demands. I don't know. These survivors have said they'll come back only on 5 conditions, and they've said that Jess Phillips will be sacked.
mm.
Survivors are consulted on who will be the chair of the inquiry. Couldn't agree more. Survivors can speak to their support networks, so that these survivors have actually been told you can't speak to your families about it.
Yeah.
You can't speak to social. I mean, it's absolutely despicable. They're being treated like criminals.
It's a gagging order.
Yeah, a gagging order. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Number four, focus exclusively on grooming gangs. This is a big one. What Labour are trying to do is widen the scope of the investigation. So what they're going to do, or they're going to try and do, I don't think they'll get away with it actually, is look at all sexual crime in this country. And then what can they do? They can say, well, actually, there's more committed by white men than there is by ethnic minorities, which is probably factually true because 85% of this country is white. So roughly 40 odd percent of the country will be full of white men, whereas your minorities are a lot lower. So yeah, it's probably true that sexual crime is more prevalent amongst white men purely by numbers because there's more of them. But the grooming gangs is not exclusively, but it's not far off a Pakistani issue, and that's what Labour don't want to come out because they're going to lose out all these votes. And the fifth condition is the victim liaison officer is replaced. I don't know who that victim liaison officer is, but given that they're giving these victims gagging orders, they're obviously not doing a very good job, are they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head when you said then why this is a shambles, why Labour don't want to do this. So this report isn't about Labour incompetence. This is about Labour's incompetence of quashing this investigation. Labour have no intentions of investigating this and publishing the truth. They have no intentions because they know what's going to come out. They know what's going to come out of these things. Labour councillors were involved in the rapes. Some of them were, not many, but some of them were. Some it's been proved already. It's also going to come out that senior Labour politicians in the councils told the police and councils and children's services to look the other way, to ignore these cases, to not investigate. It's also going to come out that for decades, Labour MPs knew all about it and they put political pressure on people not to look and not to investigate and to cover it up. That's what's going to come out. And when that comes out, that potentially could destroy the Labour Party forever. They could disappear as a party when that comes out. Now, on the flip side of that, Labour Party have also saying to themselves, we can't publish a report that predominantly concentrates on Pakistani Muslims because we've got a problem of keeping those votes anyway. We're losing them to the Greens, we're losing them to Lib Dems, we're losing them to your party, we're losing them to independents. We can't afford to lose all this Muslim bloc vote. And if we're the political party, if we're the government who publishes this report that blames Pakistani culture, because that's what the problem is, to blame Pakistani culture, we're going to lose all those votes. They're quite happy to. That's what I think their strategy is going to be. Let Jess Phillips take as much flack as possible. Let's keep her in post as long as possible to take as much crap as possible. And at some point, we're going to have to sack her. The next person who replaces her will just follow the Jess Phillips playbook. Delay, delay, delay. And maybe eventually 2 years down, well, they can say straight away, new person, new investigation, let's start again. This was a failure. We're taking advice from the victims. And 2 years down the line, fuck all would have been done again. And maybe we sack them. At that point, it's too close to a general election and we'll commission a report, but it won't publish for 3 years from now, and it's someone else's problem. It's going to be delay, 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 delay. That's their strategy.
It's the strategy, definitely. And until it became even more prevalent again in the last couple of weeks, it should always be in the news, really, but it had quietened down a little bit. But thanks to the victims, the brave victims coming forward and speaking about how badly they're being treated by these idiots in government, actually, I don't think that strategy is going to hold water now. I don't think they can possibly delay this much further. The only way they can avoid having a general election before any report comes out that's going to damn them even more than they already are is by doing what I said and calling that very early general election so the grooming gang report can't come out. People are now calling for this inquiry to be time limited. So Farage, for example, has come out and said it should be 6 months. But make no mistake, you're right there. Senior police, social workers, councillors, the Labour Party, I can almost guarantee you now, are going to be disproportionately affected by this. I'm not saying that other parties haven't got people who've done wrong as well. They probably have. But the Labour Party is going to be heavily affected by this because most of the areas were Labour councils. There's even people that are now Labour MPs sitting on those benches. I don't want to get his name wrong, so I'm not going to say it. But the guy who's the MP for Telford now, Samantha Smith, who's a grooming gang survivor, she's spoken out many times. He blocked an inquiry into Telford. And later on, after he became an MP and this issue came up again, he then put a video out saying, I tried to get an inquiry for Telford, but it was blocked by government, blocked by the Tories. And everybody came out and said, no, it wasn't. And now Tommy Robinson has come out and he said that he's got all the dirt on this guy and he's going to release it all. He says as soon as he releases it in some documentary form, whatever it is, he'll have to resign as an MP. So, and he won't be the only one. There'll be more of them on those benches that were leaders of councils at the time, and they will have to answer for what they've done. And you know what's worse about this is they're not all going to be brought to justice. They should be. They should be locked up in Tower of London, as far as I'm concerned. Put them in the dungeons, but they won't be. The people at the top of government, the senior police officers, etc., they won't be held to account. They'll probably retire quite quietly with a nice fat taxpayer-funded pension, gold-plated pension, and we'll never hear from them again. That's the worst thing about it. And it really sums up our establishment. That, by the way, you don't fail and go downwards in this country in the public sector. You actually fail upwards, and that's one of the main reasons this country's in the state that it's in.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of these people will never be brought to justice. We're finding the perverts now, the pedos, and they're being arrested and sent to jail. Fine, great. I want that. But you're right. I want the people who covered it up. I want the senior council managers. I want the senior police, and I want politicians investigated, put in court, and if found guilty, I want them sent down. And you're right, we're not going to get all of them, but I want at least some of them. I want some of them so other civil servants and politicians in the future say to themselves, I better do the right thing because 10 years ago, 8 former politicians, 4 senior police officers, and 15 council managers all went to jail. I need to do the right thing now because in 15 years' time, I don't want to be them going to jail. We've got to get, even if it's only a handful, we've got to get them into jail. And you talking about Labour aren't the only party involved in this. You're perfectly right. What is the only explanation for Tories being in power for 14 years, knowing they could severely damage their opponent's Labour by investigating this and blaming them? There's only one reason why they never did that, and that's because they know at a much lesser level, they know they're implicated as well. They know some of that crap will stick to them. That's what they know. That's why they never investigated it properly.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I mean, at least Kemi's coming out now. I mean, to be fair to her, she's actually done all right last couple of weeks. She's done pretty good. She's absolutely nailed Starmer at PMQs. And this week she used all 6 questions, quite rightly so, on the grooming gangs and that issue. And Starmer didn't know where to go. He didn't know what to do. He had no idea what he was doing. He's just trying to defend, votes like we said before. But Kemi at least can distance herself slightly from not the last government entirely, because she was a minister, of course, but she can distance herself from most of the last 14 years. And she can actually go hard on this. And to be honest with you, if she had any inkling or, knew that any councillors in her constituency or anything like that had been involved, then she wouldn't be going so hard. She'd actually be fairly quiet, I think, on the issue. But she's not. She's going really hard on it. But there will be Tories involved, there'll be Greens involved, there'll be Lib Dems involved, you name it. And what they really need, of course, is the jobs taken away from them, whatever that is. I don't care if they're a councillor, an MP, whatever. They need the pensions taken off them and then just leave them. I don't care what happens to them. Could not care less. They should be in prison, but that, again, it never happens. These people never get put in prison. They just fail their way upwards. But I'll say one thing, at least the Tories, or Kemi Badenoch at least, is doing her best to hold Labour to account at the minute. But you're absolutely right, it isn't all Labour's fault. It is partly because there are people from Labour that have probably been involved in covering this up. But the Tories did have 14 years to act on it, and they did nothing. And as we all know, it's much easier to shout from the sidelines than actually being in government itself.
Yeah, I want to see what the next government does. So it'll either be Reform, it'll either be Tories, or it'll either be a coalition of the two. The next government has to do something about this. The next government has to get a judge-led investigation with powers where they can call people. If you don't turn up, you get arrested. Where when you speak to the committee, it's under oath, and if you lie, you're going down. They're the sort of powers we need in this investigation, because other investigations have called people to answer questions and they've refused to turn up. And it's like, I don't have to turn up, so I'm not. And some of those people have been senior police officers saying, I'm not turning up. And it's like, well, how's that an investigation if you can just say, I'm not turning up? And then talking about delaying reports, that's what Andy Burnham did in Greater Manchester before the last mayor election. He had a report, which turned out to be a whitewash, a load of crap it was. And we knew it was going to be a load of crap, but he delayed it for nearly a year till after the mayoral election, and then he released it. So these politicians do these tricks all the time.
The scumbags. That's what I'm sorry, the scumbags. Who, in their right mind, what normal person, what decent person, seriously would put anything above the protection of children being sexually assaulted and then not wanting to investigate it? What sort of a country are we living in? It's absolutely incredible. I struggle to think of a worse crime than abusing children. I honestly can't think of a worse one. I know there's horrible crimes out there, but I can't think of a worse one than that.
I can.
Go on.
And that's covering up for votes the abuse of children.
All right, yeah, fine, yeah, okay. So, and that's exactly what these people are doing, though. It just makes you sick. Manchester, I think, is now a minority white city. So Andy Burnham's probably, and again, just to be clear, I'm not saying that anybody who doesn't have white skins involved in his grooming gangs. I'm not saying that, but he's just scared of losing a minority vote, and he's willing to cover up anything. They're willing to literally cover up the abuse of children to save their own political necks. It, it beggars belief. I'll lose ways to insult these people because you know what? Well, they don't care. You can insult them all you want. They do not give a toss. They sit in their ivory towers. They don't care. They just want to get as many votes as they can. And the only thing Burnham did recently was get too big for his boots once again, run for the leadership before he was even MP, and now he's just an irrelevant little nobody again. So, and he's blown it now. He'll never be Labour leader, thank God.
Hmm. Talking about change, because things are changing on this, I've spoken about a dozen, 15 times now at street protests about trying to keep this issue alive in the public mind. So there was one on Saturday afternoon just gone in Rochdale, again, which has got court cases live at the moment for grooming gangs. And it's the first street demonstration I've spoken to that actually had quite a few Muslims, Asians, Pakistani looking people in the audience clapping and shouting because the message have got to them now as well. This is what's going on in your community. And the decent people in their community going, we don't want this now, community, because these people will abuse my children. I don't want this in my community. And it's the first time, and I've been doing this now for 4 years, it's the first time there was like 12, 15 Muslims in the audience shouting and clapping and cheering. Not seen that before. Things are changing.
Yeah, they are, and you know, anybody would be quite wrong to say that all Muslims are bad. You can't tar every, you can't tar everybody from any culture or skin color, whatever, with the same brush. We're all different in the day. We're all flesh and bone, and there are some decent people in those communities. Not enough speak up, and I'm absolutely certain more know about it than what let on, and they should speak up more. But we do see them speaking up, and I like you, I've seen it more and more recently as well, and you know why? And I've even seen Muslims, by the way, speaking up about this Islamophobia bollocks as well that they want to bring in. Because all this kind of thing does, whether it's grooming gangs, whether it's singling a religion out for a special blasphemy law, etc., what does it do? It breeds resentment. Everybody else in the country looks at them and goes, "You lot are scumbags." And as I said, it doesn't apply to them all, but that's the way a lot of people think. And you can't blame them for thinking that way. Because when you see it happening, you see it on the news, you see people like us talking about it, what are people going to think? Of course, they're going to be pissed off. So the moderate ones, the normal ones who just live a normal westernized life, go to work, whatever, pay their taxes and that, regardless of their religion, they also know that this is going to come down very badly on them. So it sounds bad to say this, but I think we're getting to that stage where it's time to pick a side. Are you one of the extremists? Are you going to behave like a complete scumbag? Or are you just going to finally take a side with normal people who live in this country, like yourselves, and band together against these scumbags? Because, like you said, if those children aren't safe, then what's to say a Muslim family's children are safe as well? They're probably not.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think people are beginning to take sides. And the Muslim community, Pakistani community are beginning slowly and little at a time, but beginning to speak out, which I welcome. I absolutely welcome. Let's end on this because I class you as a Nostradamus of YouTube. So let's get back to Jess Phillips. What do you predict with Jess Phillips? Can she stay for days, weeks until May? What's your prediction on Jess Phillips?
The fact that I actually thought it was four, but you're quite right, it is five now. The fact that five of them, the victims, have now said they're not going to take part. The two heads who were going to cheer it have all stood down. Farage has said this is collapsing before it's even begun, which it definitely is. Combine that with Starmer's vote of confidence in her, I can't see her lasting another week. But she might, she might. But no, I'll tell you what, I'll stick to it. I think she's got less than 7 days left. It might be this weekend when the news is less prevalent. Like they can try and get it out there quietly a little bit, but I think it could be this weekend.
I tend to agree. I think if she's going to go, it's going to be this weekend, so they can start the next week with this over. Because why would they want if they're going to drag it out another week or two with these headlines, they may as well drag it out for 6 months and a year. So if she's going to go, I think it's going to be this weekend. I don't think she'll be in minister on Monday morning. And now that Nostradamus has agreed with me, I'm feeling I might put a bet on it.
She's past her resignation point, though, hasn't she? If she really did care about safeguarding women and girls, etc., and care about getting to the bottom of this grooming gang issue, her ideal resignation point was straight away. As soon as Starmer sent her out to start defending the indefensible, she just said, "Nope, I'm going back to the backbenches and I'm going to keep speaking about this issue." But that's gone now. Everyone's seen through her lies, her bullshit, and we can see that she's just an empty trouser suit or whatever. So she's definitely finished, and I think it'll be the victims that force her out of a job.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's ruined her own reputation. She could have kept that reputation 6 months ago by resigning and going, "This isn't going to go anywhere, and I'm not going to put my name to this." But because she sold her soul to be a minister with a chance of being re-elected, she sold her soul. Her reputation is done and dusted. And the victims, you're right. You can argue against Lee Anderson from Reform and say he's just playing politics. You can argue against Kemme. What did you do for 14 years? You can argue and bat that away. But when you've got 5 women who were gang raped over years saying you need to go, how do you stay?
Yeah, tell you what, I've got no sympathy for her whatsoever, just to be absolutely clear. But I tell you what, if I was a woman in that government, I'd be pretty bloody annoyed. But none of them resigned, like you just said. They like the ministerial cars, the ministerial salaries. But it is always women that get sent out by Starmer to humiliate themselves, who get the crap jobs. He's definitely got some sort of problem with women, without a doubt. So, on the one hand, I can see why she's so frustrated because she's being sent out there to defend it. But again, like we've both just said, she could have resigned, she could have shown a bit of principle, and then she wouldn't have had to defend the indefensible in the first place.
Yeah, she's in charge of her own choices. She could have made choices a long time ago, but she made the choices she made for those reasons we think are those reasons, personal convenience. Ash, as always, thank you so much for coming on. Once I cancel this podcast, I'm going straight to the bookies. Should be gone by weekend because you've confirmed it because you're the wise one.
Yeah, cheers, Nick. Thanks very much.
Bye bye.
Cheers, bye.